You're listening to Behind the Lines, a podcast presented by In Play Live and powered by Pinnacle, the #1 sportsbook where winners play and never get limited. Go to pinnacle.com/InPlayLive to sign up and get in the game.
New text. This is unreal. New text. To throw the ball 3 times there is just insane. New text. Just injured one of his most important players because he didn't. New text. Not kneeling. New text. My eyes.
Hello and welcome. It's Behind the Lines, powered by Pinnacle, purifying the sports betting industry. I'm Shane Pace, with us as always. And again, we've got the great Gosu joining us, John Wilson, with us right off the top for our very last show in 2024. All right, we'll do a little rewind and a little forecasting, both with the gridiron grind and with the big picture of betting. But first, guys, why don't we start off with the week that was in the NFL and is kind of just wrapping up. I'm going to start off by just giving Netflix some props. Kudos to them. They pulled off a solid double broadcast on Christmas Day with the 2 games there, the Chiefs and Steelers, and the Ravens-Texans games. Both went off without a hitch on Netflix. I tuned in just a little bit here and there as it was Christmas Day, and I've got 3 young ones running around the house, and we were really enjoying Christmas Day as a family, so I didn't watch or bet on a whole lot of football that day, but I did throw it on Netflix just because I was curious to see how they were doing with it, and it was sort of on in the background here and there. So if there were any issues, you guys please feel free to raise them, but from everything I saw, I think it looked like they pulled it off, and it was much, much better than the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight from a technical standpoint, but also even from an editorial broadcasting standpoint. I absolutely loved seeing Scott Hansen and Drew Brees in the studio there, and sort of breaking things down in between the games, and sort of when we might see commercial breaks and that kind of thing. I got a lot of love for Scott Hansen. For people who don't know, this is the guy who anchors the broadcast desk on NFL Red Zone. He's one of my favorite NFL broadcasters out there. I think he does a phenomenal job on Red Zone, and what he does, I don't think people understand or give him enough credit for it. The guy sits in a chair for 7 hours straight. He doesn't even get up to go pee. He's even talked about that before. Like, he doesn't drink a lot of liquids before NFL Red Zone begins at 1 p.m. Eastern. He makes sure that he can be there for the entire time. I think he's an absolute broadcasting legend. Love Scott Hansen. So it was great to see him on the Netflix broadcast, and to see him alongside a guy like Drew Brees, I thought was perfect. Drew Brees, one of the legends of our QB generation. So I enjoyed that a lot. I thought Netflix pulled it off. Did you guys have any issues with Netflix?
John, did you watch the game on Netflix?
Yeah, we had it on at my parents' house, so I didn't have any problems with it. I mean, it was all fine. It's all good quality, and
it's like kudos to Netflix.
It worked. Yep.
It's kind of funny. It's like, oh, give them credit, guys. The feed worked. You know what I mean? Like, fuck. So I threw on a couple different feeds and actually was tweeting about it and did some real time tests and things like that. It's interesting. So when I first jumped onto the feed, it was 23 seconds latent. And then I refreshed my feed just for the hell of it. And then the remainder was about 40 seconds latent. And I couldn't get it back to that 23. I did notice some people online talking about needing to fast forward, like constantly needing to fast forward. I didn't have that issue. And then midway through maybe like the third quarter, I was like, oh, I'll just see if I can fast forward. And I was able to hit the plus 10 seconds button once. I think just as a general statement, nothing to do with Netflix. When people are watching sports, they don't need to see every single millisecond of the game. Streaming services should automatically skip forward for the user in all circumstances. Now, if I'm watching a movie, I don't need it to skip forward if it needs to buffer or whatever it needs to do. But like I remember going to New Jersey, visiting Kenny at his shore house and doing a weekend of betting. And at the time, he's ditched them, but at the time he was using DirecTV. And we had to have all the remotes out, and about every 5 minutes or so, we'd fast forward all the games to keep them up to speed. And it's because they slowly get more and more delayed as time goes on. And again, for sports, no service in the world should you ever have to do that. They should auto skip forward. So, Shane, to your point, one thing I thought that was really freaking cool, and I know nothing about sports viewership. I know there's a lot of discussion right now about how the NBA viewership is down, even though Christmas Day was a home run for the NBA. Apparently it was an absolute home run. But again, I don't know what numbers are good or bad. Apparently they had 65 million unique viewers or something like that on the Netflix Christmas. I'm assuming that's really good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that was sort of throughout the entire day of broadcasting. Yeah.
Right. And so there's a couple things that were just sort of interesting because, again, we talked about the business of this last week. So I'm going to look at like the business aspects of it. I thought it was hugely freaking cool to watch Drew Brees explain the rules of the game to a guy, an international viewer,
that was funny,
that genuinely wanted to know what the numbers meant. And I just thought that was freaking cool. Just the way he explained it. Obviously, we knew the answers to those questions. It was just one of those moments where you're like, that's really freaking cool. Yeah. You feel like people are being brought together in a certain way. So then that's where I'm like, why is Netflix doing this? And I was talking shit about them last week, like, stay in your lane. I'm going to check myself for that comment. Kudos to the NFL to put themselves on a platform that has people around the world asking about the rules of the game so that they can follow it in. Huge kudos. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely
separate of the stream issue, right? Like I just thought that was so cool to watch. Now, from a business standpoint and a viewership standpoint, that makes perfect sense to me. What Netflix did a spectacular job of is people that watch Netflix always want something new. And that day, the number one trending item was Christmas game day or however they worded it. And you automatically click it because you're like, oh, what's everyone doing in the world right now? Like, what reality TV show is everyone talking about? What this, that, or the other is everyone talking about? I want to be in the know. So then I get home and it's now Boxing Day, December 26th. And I flick on Netflix to throw on in the background. And sure enough, it says under the continue watching tab is Christmas game day because I didn't watch all the games. And I stopped watching the Chiefs game around the time I just said, the middle of the third quarter. So Netflix is now recommending me to pick up where I left off, like a show. And I am certain this wasn't 65 million people, but there is a percentage of those 65 million that then went and finished the game at a later time because of Netflix interface. And I thought, again, that was also cool and well done on their behalf. So from a streaming standpoint, it's like, hey, they did it. That I don't know how much that kudos gets. I think that's like the baseline standard, but separately of that, I thought they did a good job by getting it up on their platform and getting unique viewers in.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw that come up a few times where international viewers were asking questions, about the game and how it works, and some very sort of what we would consider pretty elementary questions. But that occurred to me too. It's like I never thought about it ahead of time, but putting it on Netflix was in many ways exporting the game to the world in a way that everybody around the world could tune in an easy way and get familiar with the game. It made it from that perspective. Yeah, that was a huge win for the NFL and a big win for Netflix to create something perhaps bigger than sports, a sort of cultural moment, so to speak. Which is huge for the game, for the league, and for Netflix itself. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Pace. Thanks for that. Let's talk about some fails from the week, from the NFL week from this past. And again, it seems like we come back to this a lot, but clock management is a major issue for coaches, and it's still persisting to be an issue. There were two incidents from this past week. One of them came in the Sunday night game, and I would say it was extremely costly for the Atlanta Falcons. Pace, do you want to set the scene for us with how it played out, and then I can give you some comments from Raheem Morris that he made after the game.
Okay, I haven't heard about any comments from him,
so I'll give you the
I'm
comments.
actually super interested in that. So I think the one of the things, just as a general statement, it doesn't matter if it's Nick Sirianni going to overtime last season against the Washington Commandos, where he scrapes out the win, or it's the first half of the Atlanta Falcons game, not the second half where they lost. The thing about them losing is we know we're going to get the questions as the public. They're going to ask, why didn't you use a timeout? They're going to say, why didn't you do this in these circumstances? But when you get the win, or when it didn't specifically lead to a scenario that people view as like, oh, good example of this. Steven Gostkowski missed a PAT in the AFC Championship against the Denver Broncos. New England scored a touchdown to tie the game, but they failed on the 2-point conversion. Denver went on to win the Super Bowl. Okay. So everyone pointed to Steven Gostkowski missed the PAT, but he missed the PAT in like the first quarter. Like, the game has now changed. You've had so much time to adjust to that situation, but that's what people love to do. They love to point to a specific circumstance. So the Falcons one is a perfect example of where, as the public, whether we're bettors or viewers or fans of the Falcons, whatever, the question gets asked. What so many people don't see is all the circumstances where the question does not get asked because it ended up winning. Going to give you an example from last week. The thriller of the Bengals game was Bengals win OT thriller, when in my opinion, the headline should have been Bengals could have kneeled out and kicked a walk-off field goal to win the game and never gone to overtime, but instead it's they win a thriller. Not only that, the interview after that game, Zach Taylor gets questioned about the game, and he just praises Joe Burrow, and it's like, we still have a shot at the playoffs. And the headline is so positive, when meanwhile, he put his team in a position yet again, because this is not a one-off, he lost a fucking Super Bowl because of his stupidity. Yet, lost an, was it the AFC Championship? I don't know what it was, but the one to the Chiefs, they had that game as well. He's an idiot, and this stuff keeps coming back to bite him, and he was just lucky to scrape this one out. But again, the headline, a win OT thriller. Now, to the Falcons game, the one that you asked me about. That lack of timeout being used at the end of the game wasn't even the worst of it. They had 3 timeouts at the end of the first half. They throw the ball to midfield. There was 1:08 left on the clock with 3 timeouts. The clock is now running. They ended up burning almost 40 seconds between the next 2 plays, and they went to half with all their timeouts. Yeah. So it's absolutely insane. And I think that this example between the end of the game of the Falcons not using the timeout and the halftime was probably the single worst I've ever seen in football, because some of this stuff with end of game stuff like Zach Taylor and some of the examples we've given, we brought up the Jets, and we brought up some other examples here. I genuinely think that they are mistakes that can happen in real time, or they don't fully understand end of game clock management. And I would say that's inexcusable, and it is, but we've just noticed that trend, that is something that we notice that maybe a lot of people don't. But the timeout is a fucking button on Madden that every fucking kid that plays Madden knows how to press the button on their controller to stop the goddamn clock so that you can still score. So the no timeout thing, I can't fucking fathom. It's insane. And the Falcons deserve to lose. I'm glad they did, even though I had their money line.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is another case too, where they had the 2 timeouts. They should have used one. They didn't. They lost, I think, a total of 16 seconds, but they still ended up getting into field goal range, right? Because they got bailed out with a pass interference, right? Well, it was long range because they kicked. There wasn't range enough for their kicker.
It was short.
Yeah. It was a 56-yarder. I mean, a lot of kickers can make a 56-yarder. Obviously, this guy can't, or at least couldn't in that moment. It was way short.
But also, like, it's not even the backup kicker thing. Because, like, Koo doesn't even have a good leg, like a deep leg anyway. You know, so they should be used to this scenario where they need to get to like a 50-yard field goal.
Yeah. Because I firmly believe that Koo would have. He might have had the leg to get it there, but he would have missed it. He's just he's just been terrible. Anyway, so here's Raheem Morris after the game. Of course, he gets asked about not using the timeout in that situation. And I think that this might speak to some of the mindsets of some of the other coaches when it comes to their relationships with their quarterbacks. So here's what he said. I thought we could get to the line of scrimmage with our operation there. Could be a little bit faster there. Trying to save that timeout in hindsight could have been a good decision or better decision to take that timeout to have the opportunity to move up there. So he's essentially saying, look, you know, I thought our team, our squad could have got to the line of scrimmage faster. But obviously they couldn't, and I probably should have used
it wasn't his last timeout.
It wasn't his last timeout. He had 2 timeouts, so he absolutely could have used the one there. But I think and I think the last time we talked about this, it was and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were talking about a rookie quarterback as well, and putting faith in that rookie quarterback to know what to do in that high pressure moment. And here we have a guy who's making his second start of the season with Michael Penix Jr. there. And you're putting all of this faith in this young quarterback to manage the clock when you're the coach and it's your job to manage the clock, you know? And you're basically saying
99 finish that.
No, you're basically just saying that you're basically saying, yeah, my quarterback's got this, when there's no reason to believe that they've got this.
Okay, so quote "got this" means they're still going to be burning tons of time off.
Yeah, they're still it would be the difference between 16
as
seconds and maybe only losing 8 seconds, 10 seconds.
Okay, so let's change the circumstance. Okay, if they don't have any timeouts, they fly up to the line and they clock the ball, and maybe they used up 10, 11 seconds. Yeah. Right? They would have done that. But part of this is they go, we know we have 2 timeouts.
Yeah, right? So just use it.
Okay, and then the other side is, okay, rookie quarterback, okay, Caleb Williams, we watch Eberflus get fired right after this.
Thank you.
Very similar situation, right? What about the first half when you had 3? What were you trying to do there? Were you trying to get up to the line quicker to not burn your 3 timeouts? Do you get some kind of bonus or incentive for taking them into halftime? Wesley, who's a big Falcons fan in our group, he messaged me after. He said, aside from the whole thing, he's a Falcons fan. He goes, aside from the whole thing, I thought Michael Penix, I don't know why I called him that, looked really good, and he's very excited about the future of that team because he feels like, you know, they have a really young, good quarterback. And then he said, my basketball coach said a rule to us when we were kids growing up. He says, you get a certain amount of fouls in basketball and you get a certain amount of timeouts. There's no sense in keeping either of them. And I was like, what a perfect analogy.
Love that.
Like, and sometimes we're like, why is McVay burning his timeouts and it'll be the end of the game and he'll have none left? And I go, well, at least he fucking used them. You know what I mean? So now you say rookie quarterback, all this shit. What are the odds that Sean McDermott with Josh Allen or Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes does not use a timeout there?
Yeah, really, right? You know they're going to use it.
They're using their timeouts.
Andy Reid 100% is using his timeout. Sean McDermott's done some silly things too, I think. So maybe not.
But I'm using the best quarterbacks in the league as an example. It's like you have veteran quarterbacks
you're still
that are
use
extremely experienced. You're still going to use them. Yeah,
because it just makes sense to you.
It wasn't the only time this happened again. So another game where we're just going to look at here where they're the heroes. Shane, it's your Vikings, and it's the end of the half. What's and this coach is getting the most praise in the NFL right
so
now. Aiden O'Connell.
No, Kevin O'Connell.
Kevin O'Connell. Same thing. End of the half. He has 3 timeouts. They don't burn a timeout. Then Starnold takes a sack, and then he has to take them. Like starts use. He ended up using them, but he had to. He was like forced to. And they ended up getting a field goal, but they could have scored a touchdown, and he kept those 3 timeouts for what reason, I don't know. Yeah, it's a plague. It's a plague.
Yeah.
I don't.
You can also, I mean, fundamentally, you can always stop the clock late. You can spike the ball, and I know you always want to have that one timeout for, like, you know, in case you botch a snap late or you get sacked and you need to burn it. But like when you have more than one, you can always clock the ball, but you can't ever get time back in the game. You know, like once those 20 seconds are gone, those 20 seconds are gone. But if you use a timeout and you don't have it anymore, you can always clock the ball. So I don't know. It's just not. People aren't. It's not a. They're not weighing the risk and the reward of keeping it.
So, John, you were not on stream for Zach Taylor's
It was
debacle.
not, no, but I was watching the game.
You
I was
were at a
watching the
bar.
game with a good friend who, like, she's a football fan, but it's like walking through the end of the game like this and me talking out loud about why everything they're doing is so bad. It was like I was just narrating this awful, like, story to her. It's just like, I had too much to compute.
So John's not on stream, and I get a text. This is all in real time of the Bengals game. Dumb coach. New text. Throws and goes out of bounds. New text. Can't make it up. I say I'm losing it right now, and I can picture the plays, right? Next pass was to Jamar Chase. It was incomplete. He texts me, incomplete. New text. This is unreal. New text. To throw the ball 3 times there is just insane. New text. Just injured one of his most important players because he didn't. New text. Not kneeling. New text. My eyes. New text. Please lose. The Bengals go on to win. New text. No justice in this world.
Yeah, that sums it up. I think in there somewhere is something about I'm like watching this and I'm texting him and I'm like a minute delayed at this bar watching this on whatever platform they're watching it on. So
right,
yeah,
right. Fuck, man.
Well, I just to go back to the Vikings there. Yeah, Tom Brady kind of was questioning that because he was doing the broadcast for that game. Questioning Kevin O'Connell and the timeout issue in the first half there, and then at the end of the game, though, he said that he's got to be coach of the year. So Tom Brady lending his credibility to that movement, which, I mean, hey, look what he's done.
And that is the thing is we see things in coaches that go beyond the wins and losses that are just probably areas of improvement. And I thought Tom Brady absolutely hit the nail on the head because he didn't just say he should have used a timeout. He broke it down completely and analyzed the whole thing. And I thought I couldn't say it any better. He absolutely nailed it. So I thought it was really great that Tom Brady said that because we're trying to bring awareness to this stuff, right? I think there needs to be awareness to this stuff. You hope that at some point someone sees something where they go, oh, gee, that was right. And that's why I'm trying to bring some awareness to the games where they went on to win, so that hopefully people can start to see this and there is a message that actually gets out to the NFL where there's a time and place where they go, oh, we shouldn't do that anymore, right? And Tom Brady saying it is the ultimate awareness. Ultimate.
Yeah. Well, maybe Tom Brady heard us. I don't know. Maybe it made its way to. But yeah, the more we talk about it, the more maybe it'll make its way to the ears and the minds of the coaches in the NFL. Who knows? All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was great to look back, but on the show we love to look ahead. We'll dive into the week ahead in the NFL with our gridiron grind. So we'll do that now. But first, I just want to mention college football playoffs are taking place. Depending on when you're listening to this, the games might already be underway, or at least one game might have already happened. This episode coming out on New Year's Eve, and the games are taking place over the course of New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and through the week here. So depending on when you're listening, will depend on what information you've been able to act on. But John, you broke it all down for us already in last week's episode. So if you didn't have a chance to hear that and you do want to hear about some college football, go back, listen to last week's episode. John broke it all down. John, anything changed between now and then?
No, I don't think anything's changed. I mean, I think since then they officially said that Carson Beck's done for the year for Georgia. But I think we already were operating under that assumption anyway. Don't really care. So no, everything's pretty much the same. So if you can go back, I guess I can't say go back and listen to it because by the time you listen to this, the games might have already happened anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. But no.
But no changes.
No
All right, great. Good to know. And I'm just going to put this out there. After our conversation last week, I did leave our recording and I did go and bet Georgia to make the finals and Georgia to win it all because that sounded like some really great advice, John. So I'm cheering for the Bulldogs. Oof.
Go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Speaking of great advice, John, we're pretty good on college football. I mean, I'm looking at the lines. Georgia lines come down a little bit. Everything is pretty much the same as what it was. What's your John? You should drop your line to your buddy about your buddy, where you say, "Well, they're like, well, the line moved this much," and you said, "Well, did you bet it today?" Can you give us that quote?
Somebody was injured in a game, right? Or like we knew somebody wasn't playing, and the line started moving at 2 hours before the game kicked off, and maybe this was an NFL game, or maybe this was maybe this was a college football game. I can't remember which one. And a buddy in my group said, like, why is this line moving so hard right now? And I said, well, so and so is out. And he said, yeah, but I've known that for a week. And I said, well, did you bet it a week ago? It's like, no. I'm like, well, are you betting it right now? He said, yeah, but I guess I would need to wait. It's like, well, there you go. People don't bet early in the week when they hear news. They wake up on game day and they make a bet.
The public,
yeah. So, and there's also this idea that like you hear something, so this is this means that I've got value on this side because this guy's out. Well, guess what? All the people who set the lines or the people who move the lines already knew this way before you did, and they've already bet it, and they're not gonna wait until the end. So, which is a good chance that if you think you know something and you're getting value, the opposite is probably actually true.
Right. So yeah, I guess not a ton of line movement on these lines from last week to today. There is movement, but just not a ton of movement.
No,
so
the Forks line has come down. The Sun Devils getting a little bit of love from the Sharp community. I think I mentioned last week. I felt like that line was maybe a little too high.
Right.
So.
Well, it should be exciting regardless. Hopefully we do have at least one good game because that wasn't the case before. So as we get into weekend 18 of the NFL, another teaser win, week 17.
Wow.
So
bang,
that
bang.
was awesome stuff. Yeah. And we're going to get to you in a second. Shane.
Okay.
I'm taking over as host here. We're going to get to you in a
Sounds
second.
good. I'm ready.
I have a bone to pick with
Bones,
Shane.
pick 'em.
Okay. So week 18 of the NFL is like just it's like preseason. You really have to be careful with what you're betting and which games you choose. And in my opinion, what you should do as a live bettor and as a pregame bettor is almost throw the book out the window because of the fact that the motivations can be unknown. Some teams love playing that upset role where it's their Super Bowl and they have nothing to lose. There's no nerves. They just let it rip. They know they're done, ready to party, whatever, after the game's over. And they're capable of beating anyone because they are, in fact, NFL teams. That's the one side of it. The other side of it is teams that just are done in every way, shape, or form. And then, of course, all the resting that occurs. Yes, we have information on that. Yes, I'm sure there are ways to make money from it. But in general, just focus on the games where the motivations are 100% clear and don't make the motivations the justification that someone's going to win or lose. Make that the justification that you are, in fact, going to be betting on that game. So a really good example of this is Miami playing the Jets. Miami needs to win to get in, and they need some help as well. But the Jets would love to let it rip in that game, in my opinion.
Divisional game. I mean, of course they want to win.
Yeah. It's been abysmal over there. And even this Bills game against the Jets this last week, was it Tyrod Taylor that came in and scored 2 touchdowns?
Yeah,
I'm not trying to say he's good or whatever, but like maybe he does come in and play a bit of an upset role. I have no idea what's going to happen there. Aaron Rodgers does fit the bill for a veteran quarterback that might just sit part of the game, right? And we cashed really nicely on that Jets game. We ended up getting some people got the game total at plus 190. I got the plus at plus 172. So that was a really nice finish for us. So I would just take that into week 18. John, what do we got?
Yeah, so I mean, if we want to go down kind of the list of maybe games or scenarios that make sense, that matter, so it makes sense to wager on. I'm definitely going to be staying away from some, like Jags Colts. Not going to be betting the Jags Colts game.
Yeah.
Like, why is that game even going to be available?
But another
to watch?
divisional
Probably
game where
won't go.
both teams are probably going to try to come out and win.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. It's one of those things where it's like, who knows who's playing for what team and how long they're going to play, and like what anyone's mindset is. Incentive contract incentives. But I know sometimes the backups for teams like that are resting. Or maybe in that Jets situation, like if the Jets end up not playing a bunch of guys or something, like all those backups need to play well because they need to get a job somewhere next year. A lot of those people aren't going to be under contract to be on the team next year, right? Like they're trying to stay in the league, so they can be probably a little more dangerous sometimes. I think that's probably under handicapped. But as far as like the AFC goes, I think it's basically the Steelers when they're the 5 seed, which you definitely want because you definitely want to play Houston at the 4 spot, right? So they definitely want to win that game. I think if the Chargers win and the Steelers lose, they're the 5. And then outside of that, it's basically Denver wins and they're the 7, and then Miami needs them to lose, and the Bengals need both of them to lose to get the 7, right? So that's kind of how things shake out. The NFC.
John, I'm just going to stop you there because of the point you brought up. So, are you saying that if the Bengals win on Saturday, the Chargers could rest on Sunday?
No, the Chargers still need to win to get the 5, is my understanding.
Okay, but if the Steelers have won, they're still playing for something?
Oh, the Chargers? No, I think the Chargers would then be locked in the 6, I believe.
Huh.
Okay, so this is something that's really important from a teaser standpoint, in my opinion. If the Chargers, and this is the thing, the line may go crazy. If Pittsburgh wins, the line may drop to the Raiders may end up being favored in this game.
Yeah, very, very well could be. So the Chargers beat the Broncos both times, right? So I think they own the tiebreak in all these scenarios, and the Steelers own the tiebreak with the Chargers because they beat them. So it's like it's Steelers control their own destiny, and then the Chargers are safe from the tiebreak against the other teams. I believe that could take that spot.
Right, okay. Because if that Chargers game matters, I know I don't. I try to stay away from road teams, but I did Baltimore -5.5 on Sunday was one of the teaser picks I took last week. The Chargers -5.5 this week. If that line is 6.5 or less, that would be a teaser leg that I would want, but I'm not going to officially say that I'm going to be taking it until I have that information.
Yeah. So that it's, the old school way of betting with the if then bets or whatever, like it would be an interesting one to do something like that. Like most books don't do any of that anymore, but that would be like a scenario where you would do that. Or maybe like you want to bet one thing and then roll it over into another bet on the next day based on the outcome. You could do that instead. So,
right.
So yeah, those are the games that matter, and I think those games, like you said, that NFC North or the AFC North games are being played on Saturday, so the Chargers will know based on the outcome of that game whether they have anything to play for or not.
And just a side note, really quickly, sorry, Shane.
Yeah.
Games that matter going to overtime, guys, the tie is a huge factor. So we saw this in Week 17. Give you a really good example. The Bengals overtime thriller. Who did they play again, guys?
Broncos.
The Broncos. If you guys were to go back now and watch the overtime, and I'm referencing how Sean Payton called plays and what he did, he played in a way where he was going to kneel out to take the tie, but the opportunity didn't present itself. They needed one more first down when they had the ball. So essentially in that game, you could have, and I'm not talking about the opening possession because I'm going to bring up the Falcons Commanders next. After the opening possession, you could have bet the Bengals money line and free rolled the bet, knowing that that Denver, provided they didn't just bust through the line, would have kneeled out. And I'm talking about with a certain amount of time left in the game. The same was for the Commandos. If the Commandos against the Falcons had tied that game, they would have made the playoffs. They scored an opening drive touchdown. Had they not have done that and got the ball punted back to them, so now we're talking about only a few minutes left, they would have worked the ball downfield and they would have kneeled out in that game. And a lot of public would have been like, what the hell is going on right now? Keep that in mind if ties matter on Sunday, where once the first two possessions are over, which again is a very rare circumstance, the team that can tie to get in kneels out because the risk of fumbling and losing the game would cost them a playoff berth. Just a side note. Sorry, Shane,
No, good to know. I'm glad you brought that up because you're gonna want to think about that, especially if some of these games do go to overtime. I was just gonna make a note on the Chargers Raiders that even if the Chargers are locked into the 6th spot, like let's say that they do end up locked in there, I don't want to make a presumption that they're definitely going to do something like resting all their players. It's still a divisional game. They probably want to go into the playoffs with momentum. And the motivation might still be there to win. I don't know, but I would just, me personally, I would be hesitant to see. I'd really want to wait for any news right up until game time on that one.
Yeah. And on that same note, and I think that's a really, really good point, just because teams have their starters in doesn't mean they won't come out of the game for the entirety of the second quarter onward, third quarter onward, or all of the fourth quarter. So if you have a bet and you're like, oh my God, and then they come out, don't be surprised.
Yeah, great point there. Cool. All right, moving on. What other games should we be looking at here?
Yeah, the NFC's obviously, like, there's a lot more moving parts with that one. The big one, obviously Sunday night, the Lions Vikings to decide the 1 seed, and then the loser gets the 5 seed, right? I think that's pretty much. I don't think there's any way around that. I think there's some weird scenario where like somehow the Eagles could get it if like all these other teams won, like some crazy combination of something that I don't really understand. But I think that game basically just decided it, and we would know going into that game whether that other crazy scenario was even possible. And then the Rams clinched the division because the Commanders won, which is hilarious. And so they're
John, you advised people on this podcast to bet the Rams to win.
We did, 10-1, and a couple more times after.
Look at that.
So no, the Vikings will not miss the playoffs.
No,
they will not.
That way.
That's betting, folks. That is betting.
I have a physical. I should just come rip it up on the during the podcast.
But great call.
Yeah. So the Rams are locked in. I think McVay's the kind of guy he doesn't care whether they're the 3 or the 4 seed. He'd probably just sit everybody anyway, right? Like he's like one of those overly zealous, like when not playing preseason, not playing, like resting in games when you're already in the playoffs. But we'll see. I think if they win, they're the 3 seed. If they lose, they're probably the 4 seed, assuming the Bucks win. Assuming the Bucks, I think, what are they, 14.5 point favorites over the Saints?
Yeah, at home against the Saints
this week. I think with the Commanders win, they're the 6, and then the Packers would be the 7, I think is how that works out. So it's like kind of one team controls like the destiny in each of these games. So I think there's probably going to be some team that upsets another one that we're not going to see coming. It's like maybe it's the Saints somehow. Like maybe it's who are the Packers?
They're playing the
Bears. Maybe it's the Bears. Yeah. Maybe the Bears beat them and knock them to the 7 seed. Like something weird like that's probably going to happen. I just don't. You could throw some money at all of them. I'd rather just.
And I mean, every game this week is a divisional game, so you're gonna find those underdogs. I would just love to just come out and beat their divisional rival to end the season.
Yeah, and the the Bills Patriots game is interesting, right? Because I think the Patriots are in the driver's seat for the first pick, and the Bills, I think the Bills are still favored, even though I think they've said that their guys aren't going to play in that game on the road at New England. Yeah. But New England probably wants to lose the game, or the management wants to lose the game. So I don't know. What a weird.
That's
game.
A weird one.
So we brought this up before, but another really good example this past week of like this conspiracies and tanking and all that kind of stuff. Players want to win. We watched Vegas give away their bottom seed, and then we just watched the Giants give away their bottom seed, right? So don't be surprised if a team like the Patriots does in fact win, and fans can't believe it. And it's simple. It's the people that are on the field. They want to play competitive sports. And like you said, John, a lot of those guys might be playing for a job the next season.
Yeah.
Right?
Or a coaching. A lot of these coaches, they I think Antonio Pierce has been talked about getting fired all year or getting fired at the end of the year. Like, does he really care? Like, he probably doesn't care if the Raiders had a good pick, right? So he's coaching to win these games. Whereas like some of these coaches that I think are under contract know they're coming back. The incentives are a little worse for them, right? Like they probably want to try to get a good pick, get a good player, get their quarterback or whatever that they want. Mayo, people always talk about firing Mayo. So like, does Mayo really want to lose to get the pick if he's not going to be the coach there anymore? So yeah.
Good point.
All right. Anything else on here that we need to tackle, that we need to talk about? I mean, obviously the Vikings Detroit game is the game of the week. They've put it in the Sunday nighter there.
Do you have any leans there, John?
I don't know. I mean, the Lions have kind of just been trending downward for a while just because of all the defensive injuries and stuff. And like, I felt like for a while it was overblown, and I do think at first it was overblown. I think we talked about that one week where they were like barely favored at against somebody. Maybe it was Green Bay. I can't remember, but I feel like that was overblown. But then it just then their backups got injured, and it just kept happening. It kept getting in. Like they just kind of have been trending downward. So I'm a little bit like that seems like a time to like kind of buy low on them after that big emotional win from Minnesota. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a great game to watch. Probably going to be a ton of points.
Yeah, okay, guys. From a teaser standpoint, the only thing I'm going to look at is games where motivations are not in question. So Bengals-Steelers game is a good one for a teaser because we know that the motivations are 100% there on both teams. Last week I talked about if you were going to do a Christmas one, the stars were aligned for the Steelers and the Ravens. And I said I'm not taking the Steelers. There's something about them. I'm sticking with that with my gut this week. So does the Steelers plus 7.5 make sense? Absolutely it does on a teaser. Am I taking it? No, I am not. I do like it though, but I'm going to pass. Falcons right now are at 8.5. You can get them down to 2.5. Something about Carolina scares me week in, week out, but I just have to trust that they know that they can potentially win the division if the Bucs win. This one's a little bit sketchy because I think they're going to try and win no matter what. But if they look at the halftime score and the Bucs are up 40-0, that's one where the Falcons could potentially rest some of their guys and keep them healthy for next year. But that is the leg that makes a lot of sense for me. So Falcons was the first leg. The second leg, I fucking hate it so much because I just love the Detroit Lions. But the Vikings plus 9, you just cannot ignore. That might get to plus 9.5. I said this about the Commandos on stream last night. It's one of these games where if you can get the Commandos minus 3, but you can tease it to 9 or 9.5 on another book, it's the perfect situation, and that was one of those games where that precisely came into fruition. Yes, it took overtime to get it done, but I'm kind of on board with that. Like if you can get the Lions at 2.5, that's something that I'm not going to bet them pregame. It's just not what I do, but that's something that would make probably a lot of sense to bet on that side, and then the Vikings side of a teasers to 9 or 9.5 if you can. So 2-pick teasers are available at minus 110, pinnacle.com/inplaylive. We've been crushing them, so let's keep it going with a week 18 W. Vikings plus 9, hopefully plus 9.5, and Falcons minus 2.5.
There we go. Yeah, teasers have been on fire if you've been listening here to the podcast and tailing those. So well done, Pace, with those awesome stuff there. All right, you've got some issues you want to bring up. Let me have it.
Oh, well, it's our next segment.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Don't box it.
Don't box it, bet it.
So,
right? Yeah. Here we go.
Are you in your OLG pool still this week? Well, I shouldn't have to ask that. Of course, you were eliminated because you bet the Browns. You didn't box it.
That would be incorrect. I am still live as we head into the Monday nighter. We are, of course, recording this on the Monday, and I am still live. I've made it to Monday night. This is a 10-game week, so my expectations for the prize are very, very low. We only had one underdog win with the Giants. So
should we switch the segment to don't box it, bet it, but then behind closed doors box it
yeah,
anyway?
Yeah, maybe. That's okay. It was one that I was looking at, thinking, yeah, I should probably just bet this at the time when we recorded on Monday. But things change throughout the week, Pace. I mean, look, am I going to be beholden to decisions made on the fly on a Monday? By the time Sunday rolls around and I'm walking into the convenience store to get my ticket, I mean, decisions got to be made, and sometimes you gotta change things up, and we got to be flexible in this business. We can't just be tied to something.
Well, the one thing that I will say is that if you bet the Browns money line and then Tua got announced out, you had some great closing line value.
Yeah, you would have. Yeah, for sure.
They looked terrible and got
they
crushed.
Still got crushed. Yeah.
You're 1 for 2 on Don't Box It, Bet
Basically,
It, Shane.
Yeah.
So the new segment, Don't Box It, Bet It, but then box it in the dark. Who do you got?
Don't box it, bet it, and then box it in the dark. Well, if I'm really going to go that route, I would say take the Vikings. Bet the Vikings, and I'll probably box that later. Right. Because I don't want to put my fanship on the line there.
You boxed the Giants?
So actually that was the decision that I had to make, right? I had decided that I was going to box the Browns Dolphins. And I was originally going to ride with the Colts. And I had 5 games I was looking at to box, and I can only box 4. And the change I made actually was to not box the Titans Jaguars, which was, by all accounts, a box worthy game. It looked like an ugly game on the surface. There was no reason to want to get involved there. But when I looked at the Colts Giants, I started to lean the same way. And I doubt teams on the road when they're playing a non-conference game generally. So a non-conference road game for the Colts there. And so I ended up riding with the Jaguars at home against a lowly Titans team. And I boxed the Giants Colts game.
And since we're recording before Monday Night Football, people will know if you won already. Did you box? You obviously didn't box tonight. I've got the
Lions tonight. Yeah. And I will not hedge.
Okay.
And I will, swear to God, I am not hedging on this one because I think the prize is going to be so low that a hedge just isn't worth it. I think there's a real chance that the Lions win tonight and I maybe just get my $80 back. And it becomes like a push on that ticket.
So Shane, it's unfortunate that this is week 18 and this is our last segment of a full NFL slate because we're still going to grind the
playoffs,
rest of the college football playoffs, and then obviously the NFL playoffs. We're going to be talking about from a betting standpoint, and obviously what's going into these lines. But I would say for next year, given that you are sitting at your potential 3rd win of the season. And again, this is not a value-oriented discussion in any way, but this is more of like, hey, how can you look square with your sports books? And also considering that you have had a decent amount of success with this. Every single day that you do this, put something on the parlay. So that at a reputable sports book like Pinnacle, right? Where you're getting the best odds, and just compare the payouts throughout the year. And obviously do it for money that isn't important. Now, I would also say don't do it at Pinnacle so that you're getting the butter on a book that actually is better for it. But something to consider for next
Definitely
season.
Something to look at for next season as a sort of a thought experiment as we go through the season. Absolutely, yeah. Because this is one of those weeks where, though I look at it too, and we only had the one underdog come through, but even that one underdog coming through might have been enough to make the payout worth it with all the other favorites that I took, which would have been 6 that I had to get right. So 5 favorites and one dog there. Or no, I guess I wouldn't have taken that dog. So it would have been all favorites.
That Colts game would have wiped out a lot of people.
Yeah, maybe.
Because a lot of people wouldn't have boxed that. And you did say you thought you had a 5-figure payout and tried to sell it.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Like the con man
you can't blame me for
on
trying.
A previous one. Right, but there's a chance that this one's bigger than what you think it is.
Right? There's a chance it's bigger than what I think it is. I think that chance is very low, given it's only 10 games. But you never know. You're right. You never know, and that's what makes this really that much fun too. Is that you don't know what the price is, and it gives you hope sometimes, and sometimes like this week, the expectation's very low, and maybe I'll just be really happy with whatever comes through. Who knows? Maybe the Lions lose tonight. That's also possible, and I'm sitting here looking like a loser as this comes out. So that's very possible.
Whatever,
too.
Man. Whatever. There's no certainty in life. No. Only value or lack thereof. Anyways, guys, great cap off. We did 7.22 units on Saturday on our stream, one of our bigger days of the year. Tons of fun betting live on Saturday. And just a huge shout out and thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast over the last year. And Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah, very, very excited. I'll just give a big shout out, Pace, to you and Raj for this past year with this podcast. Just to sort of go behind the scenes a little bit for people who might not know. Pace and Raj went to Bet Bash. They did it on short notice. They sponsored an event. They met a whole bunch of people, and a lot of those people ended up here on the podcast. And that was a big win for us on the show. It was great to meet a lot of those people, and I get a chance to chat with people for me, and make those connections. So big shout out to you guys. But there's two other people behind the scenes as well that I absolutely have to give a shout out to here at the end of the year, and that is Sabrina, who has booked us a whole lot of those guests throughout the year, managed, the calendar and got them into the seats for us. So Sabrina, thank you for everything you did over the past year. Without you, this show certainly wouldn't be what it is. And Chesto. For those who don't know, Chesto is Pace's brother. He does all of the editing for the show. He makes sure it all gets posted on time. So Chesto, big thank you to you as well for everything you do. This year was pretty awesome for the show itself. Securing the Pinnacle sponsorship was absolutely incredible. So again, great job on that, guys. That happened way sooner than I thought it could happen, and it's fantastic. And we hope to keep them aboard as we go forward into 2025. And for all of you out there listening, what can you expect in 2025? Well, I hope a lot more of the same. And I know that might sound a little bit like, oh, what, you don't have new exciting stuff for us? Well, I think that this year was full of a lot of new and exciting, and we don't know what's to come, but I hope to keep bringing you a lot of new voices, a lot of people in the space who are doing things differently, trying to change the game. Maybe they're out there exploring new edges. I look at every conversation as an opportunity to learn and grow, and I think we had plenty of that over the course of 2024 here on this show with the guests we've had on. We've had a lot of different people, some of them sharp sports bettors, some of them not sharp sports bettors, some of them maybe portraying themselves as sharp sports bettors. And I don't know, maybe I leave afterwards with kind of questions about whether they're sharp or not, or how sharp they might be. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is to learn from others and grow and sort of see what others are doing out there, and then let you, the audience, decide what you think is what. And I think we've done a fantastic job of that over the course of the year. And I just look forward to continuing to do that in 2025. So thank you to all of you out there listening. We really appreciate your support. Give us a like, a comment, a subscribe, all those things. John, any parting messages before we go? It's been great to have you, John, here with us doing this gridiron grind. So thank you to you for stepping up week in, week out and doing it. I know we teased you a little bit here and there when you've missed it, but that's only because we value having you on so much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been fun, guys. This was like of all the years to come on and do like or try to sharply analyze games, especially in the NFL. It's like been a hard one because there's been, I think, only one underdog one this week and stuff. It's like it's not unusual. It's been like the most public heavy, favorite heavy week in year in like 30 years. So it's been kind of an adventure, but just sitting on those square teasers every week made some nice money. So
there we go.
Right on. Also, John, I think that is a good point to segue into the value of live betting, right? So, you might take a hit in a game where, things didn't go your way with one pregame shell fired, right? But you might be able to fire 3 or 4 or even 10 or 12 shells on that game live that went your way. I know we certainly experienced that with the Georgia-Texas game, right? Where you had Texas pregame, and it ended up being one of our most profitable games of the entire year, even though garbage was thrown on the field and we had a delay for 30 minutes. But I know you can attest to that firsthand, being a guy that was a pregame pro, still is, but obviously your bankroll has taken you with, I'd say, a greater percentage of units deployed to the live side of things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And, we talk about betting the teasers, betting all things pregame that come up in the grind on Pinnacle, pinnacle.com/in-play live. And yes, they are our sponsors. So of course we're going to talk about them, but we don't really talk about their live markets. They do have plenty of live markets out there, and you will get the best possible odds for some of those live markets as well. Great limits. if limits are an issue for you and you're finding, getting, bets down live is hard, Pinnacle's got great limits for live betting as well. And again, you might be able to snag something on Pinnacle that is perhaps hanging there, or something that might get you cooked on another book. Pinnacle's never going to cook you. They're never going to limit you. You can get that money down, and tons of live markets. So just got to mention that, because I don't think we give them enough love for their live markets, and they got plenty of them. All right. Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been great. Till next week, when we break down the NFL playoffs, and hopefully we'll have lots more coming to you in the new year, in 2025. But until then, to all of you out there, keep beating those books.
And with that, the 2024 season comes to an end. Good night.